Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Taiwan Internet Governance Forum. Following, we are delving into the fascinating topic of navigating intermediary liability and enhancing transparency in the digital age. Please give a warm welcome to the moderator for the session, Nicole Chan, former Chairperson of NCC Taiwan, ICANN ASO AC, Vice Chairperson of Digital Transformation Association. And joining us on site, please let me introduce Amin, Content Workstream Secretariat, Asia Internet Coalition, Eve Chiu, CEO of Taiwan Fact Check Center, Joy Chen, Deputy CEO of TW-Ning. Joining us virtually, we have two distinguished guests who are contributing from afar. Ming-Hui Huang, Associate Professor, College of Law, National Taipei University. Jean-Jacques Sahel, Head of Content Policy, Asia Pacific, Google. Can our virtual speakers hear our on-site voices?
Okay, no problem.
Yes.
Great. I'll now hand the floor to our moderator.
Thank you. Welcome to the panel 3 of TWIGF 2023. I think, the section is entitled the Navigating Intermediary Liability and Enhancing Transparency in the Digital Age. So this section's goals is to talk about the issues related to the safeguarding an open, trustworthy, interoperable, secure, and resilient, especially from Taiwan's point of view in the internet. So I think we are going to discuss some subject. Yeah, because you know this issue is very important and attract all the notice and all the everyone pay more attention to these issues. So we are going to discuss some subject, including the balancing freedom and the responsibility and the role of transparency in building trust. And we are going to share some cases. Then navigating legal complexities. You know, from this morning, I think we have already known that within the internet structure, I think the many issues, it seems like comes from different layers and makes things very complicated. So I think we need to think about how to build up a good framework of regulation. And then the other section we would like to discuss is about the tech solutions and ethical considerations. Yeah, because maybe all the issues will have no exact answer for the time being, but we need to put all the principles and the considerations we would like to raise and set up some good mechanism and procedure to discuss all these issues. So we are going to ask our panelists to talk about some tech solutions and ethical considerations, and of course the future perspective. So I think I'm going to introduce our panelists a little bit more because they have all a good experience. The first panelist is Amin. Right now is the Content Workstream Secretariat of AIC. And he currently serves as this position where he looks into all issues related to the content moderation, and also we're versed in other related policy areas such as transport, cloud, and e-commerce. So very broad, but we'll focus on the content today. And the second panelist is Eve Chiu. Right now, Eve is the, actually she is an old friend of mine, but got a new position. Eve is the CEO of TFC, and she also was the CEO of the Foundation for Excellent Journalist Award, and also sitting in the board of PTS since 2016 to 2022. And our third panelist is the professor at Ming-Hui Huang. He is online right now. Professor Huang is Associate Professor of College of Law, National Taipei University. He's a legal specialist in the areas including the constitutional law, administrative law, communications law, and policy. He also served many public service positions, including the Commissioner of the Administrative Appeals Commission, National Development Council, and also other important position for the from the government. And our next panelist is Jean-Jacques. Jean-Jacques, okay. Is the head of content policy, Asia Pacific Google. And he has very good background. He was appointed Asia Pacific Information Policy Lead at Google in November 2019, overseeing Google's public policy approach in the region for issues including misinformation, online safety, and intermediary liability. He has been involved in international government and regulatory affairs for over 15 years in both the private sector and the government sectors. And before Google, he also worked for ICANN. Yeah, right now I'm the ICANN AC Vice Chair, so I'm quite, it's just like a colleague. And also worked for Skype and Microsoft, has a very good experience. And our last panelist comes from TWNIC. Joy is the Vice President of TWNIC, and she also is responsible for the heading of the TWCERT CC Taiwan, and so she is the expert of cybersecurity. Prior to his position, Joy was the Deputy Director General at the Cyber Trust Technology Institute of III. So right now, I will hand over the floor to the Edika, Amin, Edika. So I think you are going to give us some experience relating to how to balance the freedom and the responsibility. Okay, Edika.
Thank you so much, Nicole. I guess we'll wait for my slides to be projected before we kick off.
Yes, please give us a few seconds. The technical team is uploading the PPT. Here we go. Thank you.
Perfect. Maybe I'll start with some introductions. Basically, I will be focusing on intermediary liability. At first, we'll start with an introduction on the AIC, the Asia Internet Coalition, just a bit of a shameless plug on our industry association. And then we will focus, I'll cover briefly about AIC and Taiwan, just a few of the advocacy work that we have done here. And then I'll move into the concept of intermediary liability, what it exactly is, and sharing a bit on AIC's institutional positions. Before we move into policies to consider, best practices, and we wrap up with the conclusion. So as a start, the Asia Internet Coalition is an industry association where we look into industry, internet, and ICT policies in Asia Pacific. So our members are some of the biggest tech companies in the world. And we serve two main focuses. So our first mission is to promote stakeholder dialogue, where it be with the government, industry, civil society, academia, basically what we're doing today. And secondly, we help promote policy best practices when it comes to countries that are looking to regulate for the digital economy. So just touching very briefly, AIC has been active in Taiwan. A few things that we have commented in the past on is the Digital Intermediary Services Act, or DISA, which since has been pulled, but of course, hint, hint, I think after elections, it's probably something we'll be focusing on further. The Child and Youth Sexual Exploitation Prevention Act and Sexual Assault Crime Prevention Act. And more recently, the Civil Servants Recall Act and the Presidential Recall Act. So sticking into the concept, apologies, I think some of the material might be a bit dry, but it does help set the scene for our fabulous speakers right after to present on their experience within this realm. So intermediary liability is the allocation of legal responsibility to intermediary platforms. And particularly what we'll be touching today is in terms of content regulation and moderation as well. So there's two types of intermediary liability. There is strict liability, where platforms are strictly liable for the content posted by their users. So even if this is user-generated content posted by a third party, all the legal liability will rest on them. And this can lead to potentially stricter content moderation practices and potentially even censorship as to avoid legal consequences. The second is something known as safe harbor provisions, whereas the platform is protected, has legal protection if they hold on to a few conditions. I think one of the first conditions is that if there is a takedown notice, they have to remove it expeditiously. And secondly, they need to have content moderation guidelines in place. So when it comes to countries looking into establishing intermediary liability frameworks in the country, what we always push is for something called the Manila Principles. This was developed in 2015 by the Global Congress on Intellectual Property and Public Interest. So it consisted of industry, former regulators, CSOs, experts, academia. And there's a few principles that they kind of push for it to be included into legislations. I'm just going to highlight some of the 6 key ones. The first one is that intermediaries should be shielded from liability from third-party content, or UGC. Number 2 is that content should not be restricted unless there is an official order by a judiciary authority. Third, the restriction for content must be clear, unambiguous, and follow due process. And what we mean by due process is that if there is an order to take down content, it needs to be done through an official channel. And why the content needs to be taken down, it has to be explained on why it violates or is illegal in that sense. The fourth is that content restriction orders must pass the test of necessity and proportionality. It must also adhere or take into account international law and due process. And finally, transparency and accountability must be incorporated into the laws themselves. So I'm just going to give a brief overview of APAC because I understand Professor Ed will probably be covering this in more detail in his presentation. So what we're seeing is that safe harbor positions do exist in Asia Pacific, and the platform intermediary only becomes liable if they fail to take down, if they are notified to take down content, but they fail to do so. But in some jurisdictions, we are also seeing strict liability that is being opposed. And this can be under the grounds of national security, or it can be a sanctions regime where they're introducing kind of cybersecurity measures and they're holding penalties for intermediary liability, for intermediaries who don't comply. So I think in more recent cases, it's something we're seeing in Indonesia under the Ministerial Regulation 5 and also the POFMA in Singapore. I'll leave this to Professor Ed to explore further in his session. What I would like to share in this session in particular is the AIC's institutional view on intermediary liability. So when we discuss intermediary liability frameworks, there's 2 things that we look at in particular. Number 1 is that there's inherent limits to the responsibility of intermediaries. This is the fact that the content posted by a third party, there is no way for the intermediary to edit this or to defend the post that's been made. In addition to this, intermediaries basically provide a notice board for users to post their content. Therefore, they should not be held liable for the content that is being produced by the third party. And I think another key area is that intermediary liabilities, they can become liable if there is a notice on the content and the intermediary liability does not take action from the judiciary authority. Another thing that we look at is in terms of intermediary liability and basic human rights. So human rights for freedom of speech is captured under the Universal Declaration of Human Rights under Article 19. And basically, if you implement a strict liability regime, this will lead to the intermediary platforms to over-regulate, or in a sense that they take a better safe than sorry approach, where they will remove content first and they will ask questions later. As a result of this, it can lead to detrimental effects where there's potentially legitimate or protected speech might also be taken down as to avoid legal liability. And these are some of the key concerns when we do discuss with governments on intermediary liability frameworks. I think the most important thing is that if the platform becomes liable, they should not look at criminal liability charges because it's seen as unnecessary and excessive. We also defend the staff of our members as well, as they should not be subjected with this. It is against global norms. I think Jean-Jacques will likely cover more on how exactly the industry moderates content, but just based on my experience, we do have content workstream meetings every 2 weeks. It's an issue that's close to our hearts. And there are already measures that are being taken place. For instance, our members use AI and machine learning to stamp out illegal content. Number two, they work with regulators in the region. If I can take an example from where I'm from, Malaysia, basically our members do meet with MCMC, the regulators. And during this period, what they do is that they share the trends on content that's currently happening in the space. And MCMC also feeds local context in terms of the local languages, local derogatory terms, and this can be fed into the AI and machine learning that's being carried out by our members to further stamp out illegal content. And the third is that our members do work on expanding their regional teams. These regional teams are there to help expedite any requests by regulators and also to work with local partners, as I think Eve will probably share a bit more on how that's being done. And in terms of how AIC members regulate these content requests, there's one thing that we mentioned just now is in terms of due process. So it needs to be done in writing. It needs to be done through the official channels, and it needs to be very clear on what exactly needs to be taken down. In the absence of this, usually our members will kind of discuss this again with the authority to get better clarification. And this is one of the reasons that content isn't taken down that expeditiously. In another case, sometimes the content is taken down by the user themselves. So there's nothing for the intermediary platform to do. In terms of policy to consider, I think we've discussed safe harbor provisions quite lengthily in the past few slides. So basically, internet intermediaries will only be liable if they fail to comply to a request to remove content or if they don't have content moderation standards in place. There's another thing that has been popping up in the region, which is called the Good Samaritan Protection Clause. Basically, if any intermediary takes additional voluntary steps to stamp out illegal content, they will be protected against legal liability. And this is being used recently in the EU, which I think I'll discuss further in the coming slides. Another thing that definitely helps is to have a clear notice and takedown procedure. So this allows the intermediaries to expeditiously remove illegal material when notified. And it also ensures they protect undue risk to their fundamental rights. So if I can touch briefly on some of the best practices that we've been seeing in the world today. For instance, safe harbor provisions are under the Communication Decency Act in Section 230 in the US. And having these safe harbors has allowed for new market entrants and new technologies to thrive regardless of how they operate. Similarly, in Brazil, there are safe harbor provisions, and they explicitly mention that if an intermediary becomes liable, it will only be a civil liability and not criminal liability. Whereas the Digital Services Act has kind of gone a step further, where they do have safe harbor provisions. They've introduced Good Samaritan clauses and also notice on the formalities on how exactly they notify internet companies on content. Before I conclude, it is a balancing act. You need to balance intermediary liability with freedom of expression, accountability, protecting users, and maintaining a safe digital environment. It's not an easy task, which is why stakeholder engagement is key when coming up with intermediary frameworks. In the case of Taiwan in particular, what the AIC has noticed is that when looking at intermediary liability frameworks, it is a substance issue. If it is strict intermediary liability, there are concerns with regard to freedom of expression, and it might also have a chilling impact on the economy as well. And from the process side, Taiwan is seen as a democratic country, so of course we do want to have more stakeholder engagement between the industry, academia, and also the government when deciding on these processes. Thank you.
Thank you, Erika. Erika has introduced the AIC to us and raised the safe harbor principle and the other guidelines, including the approaches. Then introduced the best practice to us. One question just come to my mind, but maybe ask you later. Yeah, because you are going to facing the different countries, different jurisdictions attitude for this issue. So it is very interesting. Maybe answer later. And next, I will hand over to the Eve. I think all of us know that Taiwan Fact-Checking Center is very important to Taiwan. So right now, the Eve as a CEO is going to give us a best practice experience introduction. Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and hello, Eddie. Eddie was my colleague in PTS, and he's still in PTS, board member now. And hello, JJ. And thank you, Nicole, and Joy, and Erika, and my pleasure to be here, and waiting for my PPT. Okay. Okay,放大. Yes. Okay. Okay. I'm Eve. I'm Eve Chiu from TFC, Taiwan Fact-Check Center. And first of all, I introduce my organization. We are a nonprofit fact-checking organization established in 2018. And why we appeared is because actually the disinformation, misinformation make a lots of harm globally. The most magnificent example was the 2016 American presidential election, and that's Hillary compete Trump one, and very famous. Everyone know about there were a lot of exaggerate rumors, hoax, and disinformation, misinformation show up during that election. Then, because the tech platform gets some pressure since that events, therefore the globally fact-checking organization booming because there are some resources released from tech company. I have to say that's the main current. And then the Taiwan Fact-Check Center always take the chance to set up our task force since then, and we became a foundation in 2021. So we gradually grew up, and we got authorized. It's a IFCN signatory. It means we are a proper fact checker. We have a professional skill to do debugging for disinformation and misinformation. And we also collaborate with Meta. We are Meta's third-party partner, and we also associate with Google in media literacy education. We are not very big. We just 16 staff now. So we debugging disinformation, misinformation as our daily-based work since 2016 and 2018 to now, 5 years. We already done more than 1,000 fact-check reports, and that's the picture and how we do our work. You can see, actually, we did our work. We're doing our work, collaborate with our audience. The people that use Line, use FB, or on the COFAC open platform, they share the rumors or the disinformation they saw. They share with us. Then we started to do our fact checking. And how we do our fact checking, we consult proper resources, for example, scientists, scholars, doctors, to have their opinion, to correct the misinformation, and then we correct those rumors, those hoax, and we make a report to share from also from the information platform, from social media, and share with in the fact-checking community. And often mainstream media will quote our fact-check report when that the issue is very magnificent or get attention of society. And of course, many people was curious about what's our relationship with government, and you can see from this slide that we don't have any relationship with government, but sometimes government will quote our fact-check report. For example, recently, Vice President Lai went to visit abroad when he went to Paraguay. Then there is a rumor said Vice President Lai signed a contract secretly with somebody in Paraguay government and will donate big money to do the social housing for Paraguay. Then actually that's a fake one, and we do the debugging. Then the Ministry of Taiwan, the Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Taiwan, quote our report, quote our fact-check report when they do the media release. So that's a very interesting that the government quote NGO's report as their resource to prove themselves by an NGO's report. Very interesting. But that happened last month. And make an example for you to let you know what we did. That's a very interesting example also. During the Biden inauguration, Taiwan Representative Xiao Meiqin in DC and was invited to join a ceremony of inauguration. That time, there was a post on FB say, oh, you see, Xiao Meiqin never get the invitation because she stand out of the fence of White House. Then we feel very interesting, and because lots of circulate a lot this post. It's very easy to do the disinformation, right? You just post a photo and type some words, then you make a disinformation, very low cost. But to do the debugging is it's very high cost, right? You have to set up an organization, you have trained your journalists, you have to get the signatory from an international organization, right? So you can compare very different costs. Okay, come back to the issue. Then the Xiao Meiqin stand in front of the fence and with Max because it's during the outbreak. And then the post say, oh, she didn't get the invitation. Then we start doing the debarking. And how we do that? We just found a clip from the CNBC. There's a film. Actually, she is among those guests in aggregation. And we also study about the landscape in front of the White House. Then we found actually many other guests. The it's the ambassador of her Holland, ambassador of EU, ambassador of Belgium. They all have the similar angle photo from their social media. Then we can prove that the Xiao Meiqin actually is among those guests. So we do the debugging. This also is another interesting one. Of course, we got some internet tool, we got some digital tool. For example, the Google Map. We do some research from the Google Map to prove our debarking. So this is just one of the example. If you're interested about our work, please go to the TFC website. You can see many interesting examples, but of course, they are all in Chinese. Sorry, we didn't have an English version now. Okay, and except the domestic one, because we have joined the international fact check network. So we often join international action for debunking disinformation. This one is for COVID outbreak, and we actually TFC initiate because we alert and pay attention to the COVID outbreak very soon. In the first time, we fear cautious. Then we started to call for our ally, our counterpart globally, to join a joint action to do the COVID rumors, COVID disinformation debunking, and that this is our chief editor-in-chief, and that's from EU, from Europe, from US, and our counterparts internationally. And this one is still going on, is for Ukraine-Russia war, and still going on. We join, be a part to do the international debunking. Okay, that's our international action perspective. And because, as you know, rumors always go fast than truths. So we have to, that our people, our civilian get immunity. Like you have to get vaccine to prevent to get COVID. So we do media literacy to let people know how to recognize the fake one from truth, and how they should do when they facing those so many disinformation, misinformation. How can they recognize a good one from bad one? We initiate this media literacy. We get funding from Google, and it's a 3-year project. We didn't do it. We are not doing it by ourselves. We collaborate with our counterparts, media-related NGO in Taiwan society, including Media Watch Foundation, and also very important partner is community college alignment, ALI of community college 社区大学促进会 We have more than 100 community college. They are doing the lifelong education for adult, and they join this project to collaborate with this media literacy project, and we went to the classroom of community college, and this is for adult, and the teachers are teaching them how to use their cell phone to make a film, and when they do the filming, and the teacher will tell them how to recognize a fake one, probably is a hoax. How do you tell them to prevent from harm? And we also went to school to join the classroom of teacher to share our experience about the media literacy. So that's what we do. And we also do a podcast. This is the Minister Tang, the digital Ministry of Taiwan. And we already done more than 100 podcasts, and all talking about the media literacy. And we interview experts and teachers and engineers and journalists and every kind of experts or the people know well about media, about literacy, and so that's what we have done, and till now we are still going on. And talking about the transparency, because I am assigned to talking about the transparency. And although we have done so many works, my colleagues work very hard every day. And I have to say, there are so many mountains of disinformation, misinformation. We couldn't do it all. And then we found it that the rampant disinformation, misinformation, actually we are working in the downstream, because those bad quality information are end up of a media ecosystem. The media ecosystem allows low quality information rather than high quality ones, because the rumors spread so soon, so fast, swift. So it's hard to follow up. We try very hard, but we found that actually we have done it in the downstream. So why? Maybe we should think about, so maybe we should do something from the upstream to reconstruct, to do the reconstruction. Engineering should be conducted. I think we are going to talk about it later by Eddie or Nicole, actually, not many, because she was a man, is a key person during her career, actually doing the legislation work. So my own opinion, we do need, just like Edika talking about the Manila Principle. Actually, we all in the global community, internationally or domestically, I think a light touch legislative regulation framework, which can negotiate with those main stakeholders of intermediary. Usually, they are tech platforms, and to lead a cycle, to initiate a cycle. We are in a bad cycle, and we need to initiate a good cycle, a cycle of goodness, while associating with universal media literacy education, of course, just like we are doing now. So, but we still to do some structure engineering to do it from the upstream, to do it from upstream position. So when we do the media literacy to protect audience from harm, and we also need some social engineering from the upstream side. So that's what I'm going to share with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Eve. You know, TFC is very important foundation in Taiwan. As Eve mentioned, that the disinformation issues maybe from 2016 after the USA president election. At that time, I just at that time took the position as the chairperson of NCC. So at that time, Taiwan always was in the front line of the battle of disinformation. So, but as Eve mentioned, that the government cannot involve into the fact-checking issues. So at that time, we encourage civil power to strengthen their defense mechanism. So we encourage civil power to set up, for example, at that time, TFC as something like project, then become a foundation from 2021. And in Taiwan, there are also other fact-checking apps, including 麦购pen, 美玉仪. So I think we still need to make efforts. And also at that time, we have the draft named the Digital Communications Act, already passed the first reading. But right now, I think we still need to make more efforts to let these things go on the way. And as we mentioned, that there are so many challenges to our legal system now. Right now, we are going to the deep water area. Okay, so it is because not only because it is cross-border related to many different jurisdictions, but also because the operation foundation of the internet, it is different. It is very special. So especially including different layers. So I think, okay, right now I would like to invite Professor Ed Huang Ming-Hui to share his experience and his insight about and his navigation about the legal complexities. Ed, please.
Okay, thank you, Nicole.
We should show our respect to Professor Ed, yeah, because he is not quite good today, but he still he still participates and share his experience online to us. So, yeah, take good care.
Sorry, I have to wear a face mask to do my presentation because it's negative. I tested COVID-19 positively yesterday. Yeah, hope it won't affect my presentation too much. And first of all, I'm honored to have this opportunity to participate in this grand event and share with you some of my observations on the liability of internet intermediaries. And yeah, today, when talking about the responsibilities of online intermediaries, I think Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act of the United States is widely illustrated. Although it is only an American law, its impact is global. And we all know that Section 230 grants internet platform operators the privilege of not being liable for speech on their platforms. However, these exemptions, literally speaking, only exempts its publishers' liabilities, not the well-known result today that even distributors' liability can be exempted. The reason why the scope of exemption has has been expanded to distributors' liability is due to a key ruling by the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeal of the United States in 1997. The case name is Zerum versus American Online. In this ruling, the court clearly stated that since Section 230 creates a federal immunity to any cause of action that would make service providers liable for information originating with a third-party user of the service, it does not only exempt internet service provider from publishers' liabilities, but also the distributor's liability. Such a broad exemption has caused many problems as internet increasingly affects people's daily life. On the one hand, I think Section 230 certainly guarantees people's guaranteed internet user, a great latitude for speech on the internet, and fully realize the value of freedom of speech. On the other hand, there are many false, malicious, and harmful content on the internet. They run rampant on platforms and cause many irreparable damages by taking advantage of the internet disseminations. Therefore, in some people's view, freedom of speech cannot outweigh this false, malicious, and harmful speech on the internet. Platform operators can benefit from information flow on the internet, but are completely unaccountable for speech on their platform, which is obviously imbalanced. In addition, the legal basis for giving platform operators immunity is because these operators lack editorial control over speech on their platform. However, today's use of algorithm cannot substantially edit content on the platform, but algorithm can decide which speech content will be prioritized. In this sense, algorithms can be regarded a sort of editorial discretion. At least this is my point of view. And the platform operators should not be completely exempt from the responsibility. So many people claim this is a time for change. And today there are more and more advocates calling for the revocation of Section 230. Even Biden and Trump, these two political rivals, they see things eyes to eyes on Section 230 and both call for its revocation. And leaving aside the voices of oppositions to revoke Section 230, the instant challenge for abolishing Section 230 is how to define the boundaries of liability for internet intermediaries. On this issue, some commentators suggesting referring to the notice and the takedown model in the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. But I think notice and takedown is applicable to copyright disputes without any problem, but it can be highly abused when applied to general online content management. Therefore, simply introducing notice and takedown is not a good solution. And so how should we define the liability of internet service providers today? In fact, in recent years, apart from the United States, other countries have been conducting various legislative experiments. Since we have come to the crossroads of legal reform, this kind of legislative experiment does not need to be labeled negatively too quickly, but otherwise, we should carefully examine the rationality of this legislation and avoid being too rash. And in this slide, you can see many countries have engaged in the legislative experiment. From 2017, the German Internet Network Enforcement Act, and then the French legislation, and then Singapore, and recently, you can see, sorry, the UK's online safety bill draft, and but I would like to, because of the time limit, I want to focus on the legislation in Taiwan. With regard to the online content and platform liability, Taiwan has several important legislation in 2023. First, for the removal of sexual images, we amended the Child and the Youth Sexual Exploitation Prevention Act and the Sexual Assault Crime Prevention Act. And the second, for the removal of deepfake images during the election campaign, we amended the Public Officials Election and the Recall Act. And in this slide, you can see the content of the Article 8 of the Child and Youth Sexual Exploitation Prevention Act. And you can see it prescribes the internet service provider, when they learns of any matter suspected to any of the offense prescribed in Chapter 4, those sexual crime, from any internet content protection institution in Taiwan, it usually refers to the ICANN, and the competent authorities and the police agencies or other agencies, when they're aware this content, such content, they should first proactively restrict the browsing or remove the web page information or the materials and the content. And the Section 2 of the Article 8 prescribed that the platform has to keep this record for 180 days. And the Section 3, I think, is the key part of this article. It stipulates that an internet platform provider and an internet application service provider, any kind of internet service provider, upon the notification by the competent authority at the spatial municipality or city level, they have to compare, remove, or take down the sexual images or videos of the victim. And the Sexual Assault Crime Prevention Act has a similar scheme and provisions, so I just skip this part. And then you can see this chart summarize the provisions of the above mentioned two laws relating to sexual images. Although I say it's a summarize, it's a summary, but it's still quite complicated. Briefly speaking, the removal process starts with a report from a third party or a complaint from the party involved. And Taiwan has established a sexual image processing center to help determine whether an image constitutes an illegal sexual image and which criminal clause it violates. And for example, if the case involves child sexual exploitation, the center will notify the intermediary. To restrict access or remove the image, and also retain the record for 180 days. And at the same time, it should notify the government officials. And the competent agency should issue to confirm that it meets the certain type of sexual image and issue an official administrative order to the platform to restrict access or remove the image, and also retain the record. And as for the defect, regulating the defect in the election campaign, you can see the Article 51(3) of the Public Officials Election and the Recall Act. And it prescribes that when any candidate when the campaign starts, any candidate, when they found a defect of himself on the internet or was broadcasted by the TV station, he may apply to the police office for the identification. And Section 2 provides the definition of the defect. And the Section 3 is a major part, is the key part of this provision. When the candidate found, when the sound or video identified by the by the police office as a deepfake, the candidate can request the TV station and the internet service provider to restrict browsing, remove or take down the sound or image within 2 days. So it's a very strict stipulation. And so, and the section 4 is about the record reservation, the same. So, how do we evaluate this recent legislative experience in Taiwan? I think the Manila principles may be the most well-known standard to examine whether these legislation are appropriate. And the major criteria for Manila principles can be summarized as follows. And I think all of you may be familiar with these criteria, so I don't want to repeat here. I just go to my conclusion. Yeah. From my point of view, I don't think Taiwan's legislation fully meet the criteria of Manila Principle, because I think the law does not completely exempt the platform from responsibility for third-party content. If the platform does not comply with the agency's instruction, it may even be fined. And the above 3 laws all grant the administrative authority the unilateral power to order the operator to remove content without the checks and the balance from the court, from the judicial branch. And the due process of law seems rigorous, but it also has some shortcomings. For example, in the case of the Election and the Recall Act, the candidates are given the power to request removal, but there is no design for checks and the balance. And the requirement for transparency is acceptable, especially as there is a clear provision for data retention period. Whether it is sexual image or election rumors, this information have great side effects, and the spatial legislation to regulate is basically a proportional approach. But this is only my personal evaluation, and I would like to listen to all the guests, the viewpoint regarding the Taiwan's recent endeavor in regulating the online content. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Huang. Professor Huang has raised some cases about the new legislation, especially from Taiwan. And he also mentioned about that, of course, we all know the Manila Principle, but maybe it is suitable for some content, of especially copyright, but maybe it's not so suitable for other content. So he raised that maybe we should take this opportunity to re-evaluate the principles and let more discussion about how to regulate the intermediary literacy. So thank you, Professor Huang. Then next, I would like to invite Jean-Jacques. Yeah, because you know, from a technical point of view, yeah, because you know, Google is a very important technology company. So maybe I will invite you to share some experience. How can technical advancement such as AI or machine learning or other technology can improve to these issues, and what is the most important ethical consideration when we are dealing with these issues? Jean.
Thank you very much, Nicole, and thanks again for having me today. Let me share a few slides with you. If I can just take a second to put them up. Okay. Right. So, well, first I should say again, Thanks, and it's a real pleasure to take part in a multi-stakeholder forum again, and especially this one because the Taiwan IGF is actually one of the most established national IGFs in the world, and a number of friends and former contacts have been involved in the Taiwan IGF. So I'm really happy to be here. Great to be surrounded by good panelists and also to follow from great panelists like Milton earlier. So real pleasure to be here today. In terms of what I was hoping to share with you, it's really to think about what our experience has been of dealing with inappropriate content online, and what we should think about as a society, as a multi-stakeholder grouping about these issues. So let me continue with my presentation. So this is me. I think, as you've heard from Nicole, I help to coordinate Google's public policy work around online content and information across the Asia-Pacific region. It's in that capacity that I am speaking to you today. Really, three key areas that I want to touch on today, based on our experience, and it's first some observations about the evolution of information and of bad content online, and about how we might be able to organize ourselves effectively to counter this inappropriate content together, including, but not only thanks to a good regulatory framework. And let me come back to that into the detail in a second. So first, a sort of introduction from a Google perspective. Why do we care, if you will? Our mission at Google, since the company was founded almost exactly 25 years ago in September 1998, our mission has been to organize the world's information and to make it universally accessible and useful. And in that sentence, in that mission, you can tell our business is all about information, but not just any information. It's about useful information. It's about also universal access to information. So for us, we want to make as much information available to users as possible when they research it, but we want this information to be useful. So we want information to be relevant and to be of quality, to really serve the user and provide them with the most useful, trustworthy, and helpful content at the moment when that person needs it. And at the same time, together with that, we work to prevent user and societal harm and limit the reach of low-quality information. And then from that perspective, we carefully tailor our approach to the type of content that should be available on each of our products and services, because they're quite different, they have different features. So we need to think about how best that mission should guide us for each of those very different products, from user-generated content all the way to just storage, or indeed search engine and indexing content that we don't host. Because all of that mission really inspires how we approach content moderation. So let's look at some of the latest trends that inform us about how we should care effectively about content moderation. We're really constantly dealing with the evolving nature of information and the evolving nature of threats to the online world. So we are very, aware of the potential for determined bad actors to use both existing and emerging technology in a bad way to create new or greater harms. And I'm sure you're familiar with the sort of headlines that you can see here documenting the misuse of synthetic media, right? Also known as deepfakes, for example. And as tools like generative AI get more out there, more popular, they can make it easier than ever to create new and exciting content, but it can also be misused by bad actors. And so that's raising additional questions about the trustworthiness of the content and the information that we see across the web, or what bad actors might do with this powerful technology. And so we need to look very carefully at threats, for instance, to democratic elections around the world, something which Taiwan is obviously gearing up to with the upcoming election early next year. And we're very aware, acutely aware, that the misuse of large language models could result in new information threats to elections or other world events. So we need to cater for that while also realizing the very positive potential of the technology and balanced the two. And so how do we address this evolving nature of information? Well, actually, some of it is in a very positive way, because AI can help us. And we've already been using AI for several years to help us with content moderation and with removal of content. For instance, AI and machine learning in particular can help us to reach big efficiencies in detecting abuse and analyzing abuse. So our teams right now are exploring how large language models can help us detect nuanced differences between dangerous content that violates our policies and the law, but also benign content. Sometimes there is that nuance where it's not always easy to make the distinction, but we're training the machines, working on the machines to help us with that. And we can have, something that we've been doing for years now is that we use those machines, those large language models, to help us to detect malicious content at scale. We have every day many thousands of user flags, or indeed our machines themselves can identify content that is probably nefarious and help to sift through quantities of information to provide our reviewers with a short list of content that needs to be reviewed. And when we think about AI, we also have to think about ethics and about having clear principles behind how we deal with this technology. We've had those principles since 2018 at Google, both in terms of how we develop products, but also use them and share them and across not just Google, but also our wider ecosystem. So we really need to think about both the potential of AI to be socially beneficial and to help us with things like content safety, but also to make sure that we build in things like privacy by design or safety by design as we develop AI. And obviously we need to also be careful about what we should not do, which is to look at making sure that AI applications are not likely to cause overall harm, that they might cause injury, etc., etc. And obviously very relevant to this discussion, we want to try and make sure that AI is not applied in a way that might be counter to international law and in particular human rights. That again guides us as we look at content moderation. An example of why we need to be careful, one, we need to apply caution in AI. Well, here's just one of several examples, because as we work to reach our goals for content moderation, as I said, we rely heavily on machines and on technology, but human reviewers still play a critical role, and we need to keep that in mind. Every time that a piece of content is flagged for review, we assess it from the perspective of the public interest, and in particular to ensure the respect of human rights. And so we need to exercise some caution, because machines can help us to detect content at scale, yes, but the context in which a piece of content is created or shared is an important factor in assessing whether to remove that content or not. And so as you can see from this piece of content here on the screen, it's graphic footage, it's potentially very violent. Normally we wouldn't have violent content on our platforms. However, we're very attentive to educational, documentary, scientific, or artistic context, including journalistic material, where the content otherwise might violate our policies. Actually here, we think it's really important for the public interest that this piece of news, this piece of documentary information remains online and available to inform users about what might be happening, for instance, in a war zone, such as in this example. And that's an area where human reviewers remain important because content moderators can help us assess context and nuance arguably better than the machines. So now, having sort of provided an introduction to some of the key considerations and emerging considerations about things like artificial intelligence, what it means on a positive side to help us with content moderation, but also on a negative side in the sense of how it can be misused by certain actors, let's think about public policy, if you allow me. Based on our experience working for the safety of our users over a number of years already, I'd like to share some thoughts about how we might develop an effective approach to dealing with inappropriate content online. We think that it should be a comprehensive public policy strategy to counter inappropriate content, and that needs to integrate multi-stakeholder efforts at its core. it needs to be comprehensive. It needs to be a whole of society approach that brings the stakeholders together. This is not something that government on its own can solve, or that only digital platforms should be pointed at to solve. We need to join forces, including with civil society, technical community, and others. And this whole is provide a complete sense of solutions. This is not just about regulation. If we take a range of policy solutions together, we can ensuring both a safe and an enjoyable internet for everyone. And so within that, I think we need to come together to identify the right challenges, to consider novel solutions, and to have a commitment within that to have all the relevant actors in society involved, from governments to industry, and companies generally across the information ecosystem, civil society, technical community, and users themselves. And I want to stress this here. If we want to be effective in countering bad content online, we need a public policy strategy, not only legislation. That's the mistake that several countries have made recently. And not only do they not succeed in countering bad content through a piece of paper that they call regulation, but they only really serve to introduce additional costs and administrative burden that constrain the online economy rather than protect it. Instead, beside regulation, or together with some good regulation, there are many practical ways to address online content issues. And for the long term, we need to think about things like helping to ensure better user behavior and user awareness online. You've just heard it earlier in this panel, for instance. When it comes to misinformation, informed users are really key to dealing with the problem. We're going to solve this through media literacy and digital literacy efforts, user awareness, together with also technical solutions, a range of solutions, again, not just legislation. So let's look at some of the key elements that might feature in a public policy approach. We've got the government, of course. It can bring people together. It's got this convening power to bring people together. It can also work on education, but not just in schools. It's educating the youth, but also senior people or people in lifelong learning. And then it's got a responsibility, of course, to have a basic legislative framework to help, for instance, to clarify what constitutes illegal content. Internet intermediaries like digital platforms, they should have internal policies in place to make sure that there's the right sort of behaviors on the platforms, have complaints and appeals mechanisms in place, and then all sorts of features to empower users, to give them wider context, to give them a diversity of sources of information. And then there's also a potential role for companies like ours, when we already have experience, to share our practices with the wider industry. There's a lot of smaller companies out there, smaller developers who don't have our resources, don't have our experience, and we want to share what we've seen emerge as good practice with them. And that's what we can contribute. Then there might be technological aspects, right? If we think about AI, deepfakes, there's a lot of technology work that's been going on in the past 4 or 5 years already to both be able to detect deepfakes, but also efforts such as ours at the moment to watermark content that is produced by AI, so that we might more easily detect content that has been doctored, that has been manipulated. And then there's all sorts of additional social research, behavioral research that can help us to better understand some of the emerging issues, from misinformation to hate speech and others. And then I just want to underline again, and it's great to be saying this here at an IGF, really, we truly believe in the power of cooperation. We need to do this as a multi-stakeholder approach. And I think here, the Taiwan Fact Check Center is a wonderful example of what we can do, bringing experts from the fact-checking community, journalists, educators, technologists and digital platforms together to network, to share ideas, to conduct training, engage users, etc. And that's really powerful. That's the sort of collaborations that we wish we could see elsewhere in the world, and which we hope will continue for many years in Taiwan. Let me quickly conclude. I've already talked about multi-stakeholder efforts, but that's got an international aspect, especially if we want to think about cross-border threats. And there's a role for intergovernmental relations, which again, the IGF is a good platform for. And just to finish off, in terms of good regulation, you've heard about it already from Edika, for instance, but also Professor Huang. I think if we think about this public policy strategy, one pillar should be good regulation, probably. And if it is good regulation, we have good practice already. We know what good looks like. Whether it's self-regulation or principles or government regulation, here's 5 areas that we really think should be considered. The first one is a very basic safe harbor principle, the principle of a notice and takedown regime, where basically it's the original uploader who's responsible for the bad content. But if you notify a digital platform that there's bad content on their platform, of course, they should make their best efforts to help. Second, we need to have a shared responsibility. Everybody needs to come together, the public sector, the private sector. Third, we need clear laws, right? If content is illegal, it should be very clearly defined. It's very unhelpful to just talk about harms. We need to have clarity in the law to help us, especially digital platforms, to do the right thing and remove content that is illegal. But we also need a framework that is flexible, that is suitable for the evolution of technology. As we know with AI, for instance, technology moves very fast. We can't have a legal regime that stops us innovating and that stops us addressing emerging threats. So we need the power to move faster, which is also why initiatives such as guidelines or self-regulation could be useful to consider, as has been done in places like New Zealand and Australia, for instance. And the last thing is transparency. I think we need to think about how digital platforms in particular can be transparent, so that they can help users understand better online content issues, regulators, and other researchers. And frankly, we should have transparency from all actors, including government, about what it does, what sort of legal removal requests it sends to digital platforms and why. So that's the sort of set of policies that we would suggest. And I'll leave you with this. And I really want to thank you again for having me. And I look forward to many more discussions with the Taiwanese community on all these issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. Thank you for sharing. He's talking about the nature of the information and how to use the technology, especially collaborate with different society, including civil society and the government and the internet society and other technology society. As I know that, Google also raised a fund in Taiwan, especially for fund in Taiwan to help the digital transformation for news media. So I think we need to collaborate all together to improve the quality of the content. And of course, legislation is a consideration about approach. So need to be cautious and to make our environment more trustworthy. Okay, due to the limitation of time, right now, I would like to invite our last panelist, Joy, to give us your insight and make a conclusion. Thank you.
Sure. I'll be very quick. Thank you, Nicole. So as I'm sitting here, my name is Joy Chen. I have been listening to Erica mention about the Manila Principle and how the global should be able to align with it, at least to take it as a model. And Eve obviously did wonderful things with owning 16 people of a staff. She's doing the fact check so well in Taiwan. I think everybody here in Taiwan, probably if you ask anybody on the street, they know the fact check. And Professor Ed, looking from the legal point of view, and also telling us how things should be worked with all this different content, the moderation and everything. And thanks for JJ, who tells us the wonders of the AI and how you utilize in Google. So I'm sitting here and I say, I'm a technical person looking at, oh, this, where do I see things? And I see the technical evolve so much, so quick in the last decade. So it was only yesterday that we were talking about what is the killer apps that we can promote in internet. And you take a nap, you wake up, you found out that there's so many different applications utilizing the internet. So well, so diversified, and every app could be a killer apps. But of course, there are the good things about it. There's also some of the things that's not so good. So what do we do with it? I think the key word is really the check and balance. That there's the harmony we try to promote, we try to bring more, and there's the misuse of it. We try to maybe put a stop on that. So when I look at it, I want to share with you in Taiwan, where I'm coming from at the Network Information Center, we're looking from where the domain that we can have some control. There's a beautiful framework that we have formed with the good check and balance. The proper process to take down some of the illegal or the thing that can harm the public interest. And there's the proper process with the transparency. So we've been doing this to tell people to utilize the technology here in Taiwan so that we'll be able to control, put some limit to that. And where I see this is really that, as Professor Ed has mentioned, the child and youth sexual exploitation prevention. Things like this, to take it to the extreme, that there's the legal ground, we can actually take it down, so there's no problem with it. There's another kind, which is like if we have a court order, and that's after the prosecutor with all the investigation, obviously we are able to execute it, to take down some of the domain, so to stop the harm. And with all that, one of the missions that I've been giving is that looking at all this, where do I see ourselves in the next step of projection of it? And I tell you that when I look at ICANN using the multi-stakeholder model, I think it's wonderful. The only problem is that it's taking a long time. It's not efficient, as probably some of us says. The technology goes very fast. The application goes very fast. The regulation, the legislation is not so fast. It's tracing after the technology. So I think the self-government type of mechanism that we are holding probably is some of the solution for now. But if I'm looking forward, I think the multi-stakeholders should still be the way, because that's really the one that really taking care of all the different aspects of the stakeholder. But it's probably going to be somewhere in the hybrid. So with the self-governance, with the self-regulation, hopefully that we can compromise before the regulation makes that stops. So when we are here at the IGF, I think the journey on the internet governance is not a short one. It's a long path, it's working in progress, it's been evolving for better hope. As I have noticed the time, so I conclude with this popular quote from the Jurassic Park. You see that all the changes that's happening, that I say that the life is going to find its way out. So when we look at the problem, look at the issues with content, look at the technology evolving so fast, looking at all the issues probably AI is going to bring to us. Some good, some maybe not so good. But life is going to find its way out, and the internet governance is always going to have its place to be able to really shape out the future. Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you, Joy. Thank you all the sharing and the insights from all our distinguished panelists. Due to the limitation of time, we have no time to open to the question for the audience. Yeah, I think today is just starting, as Joy mentioned, that this is a journey, and we are on the way, and we need to work together to make our efforts to make our best to safeguard an open, trustworthy, interoperable, secure, and resilient internet, especially in Taiwan. Thank you. Thank you for your participation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chan, and thank you to all panelists for an animated discussion.